Hey everybody, I hope you're enjoying the game. I'm not going to hold you too quick because I know you want to get back to seeing the Dallas Cowboys hosting the Green Bay Packers in a scintillating contest that will determine the who advances to the division round of the NFL playoffs. But I really had to get this, out of the way, as they say, and up and at 'em, uh, because the email that I received. In fact, and this was the tone that bothered me. I would have, if the person had said, "Hey, thank you very much" or something, I probably would have made a very nice email about it, or vlog about it anyway, because I just like to vlog, and you know I like to explain to others who's responding to me. It doesn't matter if a person stops me in an airport and recognizes me, which has happened a number of times, and thanks me for just being a vlogger and getting out a certain message, regardless of what it might have to do with, or this gentleman, Mr. Stuart Abdo, who wrote me uh, this morning. But again, it was the tone of a tone that was a little bothersome to me. And so I felt it necessary to get it out, just for, if anything, just to say, hey, we know who you are. Relax. Uh, you're certainly entitled to your opinion. Just be careful how you state it, and so on. Right? That was the idea, and so that's precisely what I'm doing here. Uh, because, and this is a lesson to vloggers out there. Don't be afraid to tell your story and say your case, but also show people who's contacting you, because a number of people think that they can talk to you pretty much any way that you want to. Now, in defense of Stewart, he was, on the whole, even though he was upset, he was mostly respectable. Respectable. There were some play parts where I thought were a little out of line, but I love the criticism. He did ask me to respond in his email, which I will read, but I'm going to read it in fits and starts by adding my response to his questions, because at the end of what he wrote to me, he 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 says, "P.S. I know you probably won't respond to this, but in the event you do, I'd be happy to discuss your opinion and mine too. And if not, I'll soon be forward this to those whom it might concern." Uh, and then he says, "I normally never feel the need to address a fool's rambling rant," so now he's calling me a fool, "and I could be perceived as being guilty of being born Caucasian, white. But I think people like Mr. Sharpe and maybe Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson are two great examples of how you say grabbing the American dream by the balls, black or white, red, yellow, green, or brown, and brown." Okay. So I checked on the guy because of, what he wrote. And he graduated, according to his LinkedIn, he graduated in 1981 from college. I'm 1980, not, and he, on his LinkedIn, it shows that he has done that. And on top of all that, it shows that I want to make sure I've got this correct and down here, but that he's from Texas, lives in Carrollton, Texas. Is a sole proprietor of something called Pre-Press Express, which he says he's done for 33 years. He went to Eastfield Community College, a community college in the Dallas area. And he also has something called Sterling Staffing, or he's part of that. He's on assignment. So it's like temp. He's an operator. He's actually a credentialed lift operator. And yeah, he's working for something called Select Staffing, and worked for them for a year. And then he worked as a temp associate for printing and graphing. You get the idea, okay? And in general, he is now, I would say, 60 years old, whereas I'm 61. That's a That's a guess. So we're basically in the same age bracket, in the same generation. Okay, cool. So in other words, if I say something about Dallas, the TV show, he probably watched Dallas, or he probably saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind, or and so on. He has a high school diploma for what is now called Bryan Adams High School. This is all on his LinkedIn page, and he went to Eastfield Community College, as I reported. Yeah. So, all right. So let's get to what he wrote, and go from there. Now, what he is responding to is what I said, and what I said again is that Shannon Sharpe was wrong, and another example of a black media personality attacking a black athlete, but within the organizational confines of a white-owned media organization, in this case ESPN. And then Shannon Sharpe said that Jameis Winston should be cut. So did Stephen A. Smith. Why? For disobeying Dennis Allen's order for a victory formation when the Saints were already up 41-17 against the Falcons. And hey, a touchdown would have made it 48. Where they were happened because the Saints intercepted the Atlanta Falcons pass. It was nearly returned for a touchdown. It fell 1 yard shy, with better opportunity to give Jamaal Williams a chance to score from the one. They did so from victory formation. Now, Shannon was upset that the defense was, quote, fooled. I personally have no sympathy for that because, look, what are they going to do? Ask the Falcons to be gentlemen and let him score just to make sure that Mr. Williams gets his touchdown? Of course not. So they did what they did. The teammates wanted it to happen. Jameis made it happen as the quarterback. Now, Shannon Sharpe went off, but he forgot that he was once a teammate, a famous one. And with John Elway, was instrumental in a key play in the 1988 AFC Championship game on 3rd and 6, where Mike Shanahan, the head coach of the Denver Broncos, sent in a play that the team had not practiced. And Shannon Sharpe said that. So Elway said, just go and get open, I'll throw you the ball. That was it. In other words, he did not run Mike Shanahan's play. He did not obey Mike Shanahan. Now, Shanahan had reasons for calling the play that he sent in, but he was overruled by his quarterback. How similar is that to what Jameis Winston did? It's entirely similar. And both were done to achieve an objective of scoring. In the case of the Broncos, a first down that eventually led to the Broncos running out the clock against the Steelers and going to the Super Bowl. And in the case of the Saints, a touchdown, which gave their teammate, Mr. Williams, a score that he could add to his contract for payment reasons. Both were objectives of achievement. That was the idea. So from that perspective, there is no difference between what one did and the other, and it explains why the Saints teammates were rabidly behind Jameis Winston, just as, hey, look, teammates back then, and of course the press, because, well, it was John Elway, and you didn't have the Steelers angry about it, right? Although maybe they should have been, but they were angry that they lost, okay? Now, in the Saints situation, and I will say, my original thought was, hey, look, that not having seen most of the fourth quarter, I didn't realize that the interception the Saints got almost became a touchdown. When I heard about what happened, I had assumed that the end result was the product of a fourth quarter where the Saints were just trying to rack up first downs to deliberately score to make it 48, right? That was my thought. And from that perspective, I thought, yeah, that's not a good thing. But I hadn't seen it. All right. I didn't even know Jameis was in as the quarterback because I was off doing something else. I literally walked in the kitchen and saw what happened. Okay. And so I made a video that was critical of what I thought the Saints had done, as much as, hey, look, Arthur Blank was going to fire Arthur Smith anyway, and he was going off. I didn't think that Arthur Smith should have went off like he did either. That was not a good look. It was him upset that his team got blown out, and then all of a sudden having insult to injury. But again, the video that I made was based on the idea that the Saints had driven down the field. Had I saw the interception and the fact the ball was placed on the run, my initial reaction would have been, hey, that was great. Why are you complaining? They scored. That should have happened. They completed something that indeed should have happened anyway. All right? That was my feeling. So Mr. Abdo writes, he writes, incorrect facts. Shannon Sharpe, and you're wondering who Mr. Abdo is. He is this man right here. Okay, in the thumbnail, why Stuart Abdo is wrong about Jameis Winston. There he is. Okay, doesn't look like he's in his 60s. Actually, I'll give him some credit. You know, dude's taking care of himself. Good for him. I'm trying to. At any rate, so I hope he's taking care of himself. My goodness. But at any rate, he writes, he retired 14 seasons later as the all-time leader in catches, yards, and touchdowns by a tight end. I know that. I know Shannon, okay? Or I'm acquainted with him. He then goes on to write, you list the date of his hypocrisy as occurring in 1988. Oops. Well, actually it did. Well, but technically, it wasn't that I list the date of his hypocrisy. I said, to be clear, since I don't think Stuart quite gets it, I said that Shannon was being a hypocrite because he was a teammate with an NFL quarterback, John Elway, who went along unquestionably with Elway's decision and did not say, oh, by the way, this is what the coach wanted. You shouldn't go against the coach. Elway went against the coach, and Shannon Sharpe had no truck with it, no disagreement. And the rest is history, okay? Same with Jameis Winston and his teammates. They loved it. And Jimmy Graham, again, was most aggressive in defending Jameis Winston among the teammates. So then so you tell me how they're really different. I mean, you have to find and quite literally turn over your head to see that think that there's a difference when there really isn't. And then he says, not even doing my own due diligence, which folks, you should always do your due diligence, your research. Big mistake on Stuart's part. He writes, you certainly don't understand the significance between the final game of another lost season against the lowly Atlanta Falcons helmed by Mr. Winston. The Atlanta Falcons are not helmed by Jameis Winston. All right. This is why I'm saying he's writing this in anger. He writes things that don't line up. All right. And he says, he says, just another guy running back. Jamaal Williams is not just another guy to the teammates. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done that for him. They had 16 other games to make this remarkable achievement and didn't. Please forgive me for missing the memo of Winston's promotion to player, coach, and offensive coordinator. Okay, here's the memo. If you go back to Burt Jones or Ken Stabler, for the most part in NFL history, quarterbacks have called their own plays. Even Roger Staubach with the Dallas Cowboys altered plays to suit a situation. Like, for example, telling Drew Pearson to run not Drew Pearson, but tell Butch Johnson in Super Bowl 12 to run the post and not the in pattern in the famous diving catch touchdown that Johnson caught out of shotgun from, I believe, 36 yards out. That was a perfect example of Roger Staubach saying, hey, don't run this, run that, run this. Or let's take Joe Montana, another great quarterback, under Bill Walsh. Joe was famous for saying if he thought that Walsh sent in a play that wasn't going to work. Oh, the old man is crazy. I'm not going to run with this, or words to that effect. And he would call something else. It is quite common for quarterbacks to call an audible. In fact, that's the idea of an audible, to give quarterbacks the nomenclature flexibility to change a play. Nomenclature meaning that I'm going to have a certain set of words to call to know, to tell my teammates on offense that I'm changing this play. Changing plays is common for quarterbacks, and quarterbacks are expected to be smart enough to be able to make these calls and these audibles, if you will, to fit a situation that benefits their teammates and ultimately the organization itself. All right. The idea is that you're going to do something that works. In Elway's case, he did. And in Jameis Winston's case, he did. All right. So then he says, or the ramifications of getting a first down in the final minutes of the AFC Championship game gets the bitter opponent, the vaunted Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Atlanta Falcons are also a bitter opponent of the vaunted New Orleans Saints, both NFL organizations. Then he goes on to write, against, again, conference championship game with a trip to the Super Bowl versus the final game of the season for two underachieving squads. Any real football person, I've covered the NFL for 29 years now, would, as he writes, any real football person clearly understands the situation and the difference of another Hall of Fame quarterback's audible, hear that? To that time, the best tight end, the best tight end ever to play at the most crucial point in the most crucial game of the season. Let's see, trip home and a trip to the Super Bowl, or bad quarterback changing the play called and handing off to an even worse player. Jameis Winston is not a bad quarterback. He's a national champion, a Heisman Trophy winner, and one of the most record-setting quarterbacks in NFL history, who's got a unique ability to throw the deep ball when he's allowed, and has had his best season in a ball control passing offense under Sean Payton with the New Orleans Saints. He went 5 wins and 2 losses, 14 touchdowns and just 3 interceptions. If he did something bad, it was because Bruce Arians put him in an offense that didn't have its timing designed properly. In other words, didn't line up passing depth with respect to quarterback depth, with respect to blocking style. So the result, as Carson Palmer said, you have to play 2 years in Arians' offense to get used to it, and then the interception rate goes down. And Carson ought to know, because he threw 22 interceptions in Bruce Arians' offense his first year. He wasn't far off from Jameis. So at any rate, but Stuart goes on and in chortles that that there's a bad quarterback and handing off to an even worse player with no life or season-changing implications. Not true. Oh yeah, getting some unworthy cracker coach fired before the charter flight home landed, which that didn't get Arthur Smith fired. And I guess obviously Stuart doesn't know the situation with the Falcons. A number of people around this region will tell you that termination should have happened a while ago. Nothing being a cracker at all. And Dennis Allen didn't get fired. All right. So he says that's the purest definition of racism, black hate crime I've ever seen from any gainfully employed so-called educated person. Now he's talking about me. He said, you're lucky I'm not your boss, so I'd fire you for these 2 reasons. Okay, so think about this. You have to put yourself in boss over me. Seriously? I mean, it's funny how I get these reactions from people who I guess are maybe psychologically triggered that I state something confidently and I have a platform, let alone own 60% of a media company along with my colleagues. Ooh, okay. But, wow. Okay. But this is what Stuart wrote. Okay. Stuart, you're not my boss at all. Then he writes, your indictment of Mr. Sharpe as a black man working for a white man's media was offensive and birthed from ignorance and misguided belief that Whitey is always trying to get over on the Negro. This is what he wrote to me. Oops, sorry, the black American, not African Americans. Now that indicates he has a racist problem right there. I mean, big time. All right. he writes, you probably don't identify as an American, not black or whatever pronoun you ascribe to, do you? This is what he writes. He writes, until we let it all go, we'll always be divided. That's not true. Let me remind you of something, Stuart. There are a lot of white women who date black guys today. All right. In good measure because of folks like you who have no problem being racist toward people like me. And you have your own homespun ideas of what it means to be black. You don't have African American friends. Otherwise, you wouldn't talk to me the way you did. You'd be a lot more experienced at it. All right. And I'm going to say something as a person who's my age, you should be ashamed of yourself. I'm just saying this straight up honestly. For growing up in this great country and not getting to know other people who don't look like you, but coming up with ideas about them that are not true, just because they have an opinion that's based on their experiences as a black person with discrimination and slavery in our history and genocide and murders that are even being done today, some would say, with great proof by police. And unless you object to that, I point to you, George Floyd, and what Derek Chauvin did to him, and what police officers, some black, did to black people in Memphis, and are now headed to jail or in jail because of it. So don't give me this song and dance and lecture like you know what's going on and you're an American. My argument to you is this: you have no idea what America is. You don't know what it means to be press at the 2008 Democratic National Convention, where Barack Obama was anointed the Democratic nominee for president of the United States, and to see all types of people, this is on my Zennie62 on YouTube, celebrating right there at what was then called Invesco Field, with black men waving American flags in joy, with people of all types, but with one purpose. They were happy to celebrate a true advancement in America. That's the kind of person that I expect you to be. This is not the kind of person you're presenting yourself to be in this letter. This is a threatening email. All right? It is a sad email. And my point is that but it proves a point. ESPN is trying to get people like you to pay attention and react. But they want you to feel okay about watching what they do. So they get somebody black, like Shannon Sharpe, to insult someone else, Jameis Winston. So it's okay to see the black people going against each other, and you sit back and essentially watch. And then attack anyone black who would attack them. So you're playing right along with what ESPN wants. Just saying, all right? And so to say that I don't identify as American, hey, brother, I'll tell you what. I'll bet I know more American officials and politicians than you ever will in your entire life. Ever. Okay? Some I have on speed dial. Oh, unless you think that I don't talk to the other side. I've had Rick Gates, former Donald Trump deputy campaign manager, on my show, not once, but 4 times. All right. And I'm a big D Democrat. But the ugly truth of America that you don't know is that we're really not divided. It's just that people who don't seek to gain friendships with other people who don't look like them, who don't take positions that really require advanced degrees, just being honest with you, okay, and a willingness to learn, all right, wind up thinking that there's this division, when in point of fact, there is no division among those people, like in Washington, who look like me, who literally float between Democratic regimes and Republican regimes, doing the same job all over and over again, regarded as experts in their field. Doesn't matter whether they're male or female, whether they look like you, me, or Asian. That's the reality. That's the real America you don't know, because you're with this idea that the media manipulates you into thinking that the country is divided. It's not divided. Okay? You just need to really get out and get to where you're learning about people whom you might think are different from you, but in point of fact are not, and are the quintessential Americans. I take that as an insult. All right. So then he goes on, he says, remember, it's simply a final destiny of either united we stand, or surely it'll be divided we fall. Don't all lives matter? In other words, Black lives matter. He says, I know they do. All right. So he's making a hammer at Black lives matter. So this guy has a clear race problem, purely. All right. He says, look at the reflection in the mirror, kind sir, and what it is seen. Crusader for your people? What? This is not, I'm sorry, Stuart. You don't write that to a person. That makes you come off like you're not, too with it. All right. And I'm sure you don't mean to do that, but you wrote this to me. Okay. So I'm giving it to you straight, no chaser. I don't want to meet you. All right. I don't have a one-on-one talk with you. I really want you to sit down and read a Bible, maybe get therapy, okay? Figure out what it is that's making you less happy about what's going on around you at a time when there's a lot to be happy about, okay? A lot. I don't know you. I don't know, but I can get a clue by what you just wrote to me out of the blue. You made a ton of assumptions about, my patriotism. All right, this is what you did. So then he ends with, look at the reflection on the mirror and what is seen. A crusader for your people? Nope, just another hater. Worse, I still detect racism against Black on white. The same thing, huh? Let me tell you something. And I want you and other people to realize this, all right? And it's very simply this, that if you take a look at statistics regarding ownership of, if I just type simply venture capital investment in Black business, okay? Like that, all right? If I type that, all right, what do I get, okay? And I get CNBC telling me, I think this is worth posting, venture capital for Black entrepreneurs plummeted 45% in 2022. The data shows. All right. All right. That's right here. All I have to do is put that in presentation and share the screen. All right. Right here. Boom. Hey, there it is. All right. This is on CNBC. Do your research. Okay? Black entrepreneurs have historically faced disparities in securing VC funding and typically receive less than 2% of overall dollars each year. All right. And then it writes, in the aftermath of the George Floyd racial justice reckoning, firms pledged to make diversity a top priority, and Black founders saw historic year-over-year gains in securing VC funding. But by the end of 2022, adverse market conditions led to a 36% drop in overall VC dollars, but Black entrepreneurs saw a 45% decrease in financing. In other words, last hired, first fired, all right? And Black women in particular have been hurt, okay? So, and it goes on to tell different stories like Beatrice Dixon, this lovely young lady out here who should be your girlfriend, all right? You should date Black women. You'll understand, all right? Oh, and by the way, I've set up a number of Black women with white guys. So when you say that I'm racist or am I for my people, I'm telling you again, Stuart, you don't know your own country. You don't know your own country. Okay, it is a modern habit to date someone whose skin color doesn't look like yours and to even marry them, and people love it. Okay? That's what happens in this great country called the United States of America. You need to catch up. This is 2020. This is the 2024 year of the 21st century. All right? And so getting investors is hard, but it's harder for us. So if it's harder for us, think about how hard it is to get a funded black media. All right? And it is difficult. I can tell you that. I've managed to power through this quite literally with spit and baling wire and polish. But our media, if you know it, isn't classically black either. Whatever that means. Okay? And if it was, so what? Who are you? Do you know your background? Do you think of yourself as just a white person? You know what bothers me? You say you're American. People I know who are white call themselves Italian or French descent. Or, hey, how about United Kingdom from the UK, British? You get the idea. Or Australian, they're Aussie. And then if you start looking back in their history, sometimes not too far back, you find that, hey, somebody in their family married a black person. So in truth, they're mixed. And then if you go even further back, they're even more mixed. So guess what? We're really all mixed up. Who are you really? Beyond Caucasian. And if you don't know, because I've encountered people who are white who don't know, and it's shocking to me that anybody would not know their ethnicity, then you're not truly American. You don't understand the American experience. It's not that you can't. You can. You need to find out who you really are as a person. You need to embrace who you really are in full, including being able to track your ancestry. It's hard for us as black people because of history of slavery and how our records were not properly kept. It's called racism. Racism is the ultimate mental illness. Get help. All right? Get help for it. Okay? Because I'm not comfortable, having a conversation with you, given how you expressed yourself here. But I'm explaining to you in this way, you need to really chill out and understand how beautiful this country really is and what your role in it really should be. And not only that, the fact that I'm going to tell you something, you're in your 60s, you need to ask yourself, how do I enjoy my life rather than going into my 60s being a mean dude? Okay? That's for you to figure out. Welcome to the 21st century. It is a beautiful place to be. All right, folks. Live long and prosper. I'll see you later. Subscribe to Zennie62 and bookmark ZennieReport.com, as well as our new website, CESLasVegasNews.com. Built them myself. See you later.